Hi everyone, can you hear me? Yes. Awesome. That's a good first step. Thank you so much, Sarah, for that incredibly kind introduction, and to Danielle, too, for inviting me, and everyone here at White Lotus. This is a really, really gorgeous space. I feel slightly disoriented because it is that beautiful. I already got to hang out with Koi. I will personally be back the soonest Saturday I possibly can to play with baby goats. So if any of you were thinking, I wish we were playing with baby goats and not listening to a reading, please know that I feel that way too about my own goats. And you should join me on some Saturday to play with goats. I like to start my readings with a poem by someone else, actually. It reminds me that generosity and homage and conversation are really, really crucial aspects of poetry, which can sometimes feel really solitary. And I know sometimes for me, I write a lot about personal experience, so sometimes it can even feel kind of navel-gazing. Sometimes I'll get into a place where I've been writing a lot and thinking a lot about me. So I like to puncture that with a healthy dose of thinking about others. I'm going to start with the poem by someone I consider one of my poetic and human heroes, Ilya Kaminsky's "We Lived Happily During the War." And when they bombed other people's houses, we protested, but not enough. We opposed them, but not enough. I was in my bed, around my bed, America was falling, invisible house by invisible house by invisible house. I took a chair outside and watched the sun. In the 6th month of a disastrous reign, in the house of money, in the street of money, in the city of money, in the country of money, our great country of money, we, forgive us, lived happily during the war. So some of the poems of my own that I'm going to read are going to come from my forthcoming book, Arrow. I'm going to start with the last poem in the book, actually. It's called O, and I think it's the one that there's an excerpt from on those postcards. There are 2 lines in this poem that are borrowed from other sources. I'm not going to tell you which the lines are, but I am going to tell you where they come from. One's from a French philosopher and art historian named Georges Didi Huberman, and the other is from a placard at a MoMA exhibit of Louise Bourgeois' work from some years ago. Stars are not the end, but the beginning. A bird is to its throat as a promise is to its sharp edge. I wanted to make for you a sun shower. Instead, I have made for you a mortal thing. Writing is knowing how to cut. There is a space in my body that did not exist when I began this book. It is a window. When I next speak, I will do so through that window. Please leave the window unlatched. When I next speak, it will be with changed lips. I wonder what their color will be. Finally, she enlarges the figure to a grand scale and cuts off its head. Okay, I've gone back and forth about reading this next one, because I've never read it before, and it's kind of brand new, and it's still a little rough, but I like to keep myself scared, and this is the kind of thing that's scary. Do you all want to be slightly creeped out by a still slightly rough poem? Yes. Outstanding. All right, does anyone know who Harold Shipman is? He was a physician. He was also a serial killer. Tricky combo. So a lot of the poems in my first book, Arrow, are dealing with the figure of my father, who was also a physician and was a pretty heinous domestic abuser. So I've been kind of thinking through that combination of things for a while. And I've been experimenting lately with a range of persona poems, which I've written a little bit in the past, but not very much. So what I'm going to read you now is a persona poem in a dramatically reimagined voice of Harold Shipman. It's called Garden of Tranquility, which is the name they gave to a memorial garden for his victims in England in 2005, and it is a villanelle. And what that means, first of all, it's my first villanelle, yikes. And what that means for our most immediate purposes is you're going to hear 2 phrases repeating over and over and over again. And those 2 phrases come from a translation of the Hippocratic Oath, which is what they make doctors take to make them promise that they won't be things like abusers and serial killers. So here we go. I will abstain from all intentional wrongdoing and harm whatsoever houses I enter. I will lead a blind fox's wedding in your veins. Here I am ready for my vocation, and now I turn unto my calling. I will labor to ensure that every disastrous weather I can imagine will befall you, even when nothing of you remains. I will abstain from all intentional wrongdoing and harm whatsoever. Understand this, my joy will come at your expense, measured in the patterns the encroaching cold makes on a body's terrains. Here I am ready for my vocation, and now I turn unto my calling. I cannot look inside a body without imagining what could be severed. The sinews attaching you to the idea of love, your inner ear's membranes. I will abstain from all intentional wrongdoing and harm whatsoever. When I began to learn my craft on an ancient foal, I led her firmly, despite the reluctance of her clawed feet by the reins. Here I am ready for my vocation, and now I turn unto my calling. To the foal I said, as I will say unto you, I am your confessor. Feel the light in your heart's roadways and the reins. I will abstain from all intentional wrongdoing and harm whatsoever. Here I am ready for my vocation, and now I turn unto my calling.
Sorry.
The next poem is also a persona poem. I don't know why this afternoon I was sitting down and I was like, I want to read a bunch of poems where I'm pretending to be other people. This one is in the forthcoming book, Arrow. In fact, it's one of the 3 title poems, so 3 poems called Arrow are in there, because I couldn't make up my mind on which poem I wanted to give that horrible responsibility, so I spread out the burden. Frequently throughout the book, I imagine the book's speakers in conversation with Nyx, Nyx, the Greek titan who's imagined as a personification of nights. By all accounts, she was ferocious. She was incredible. She's a personification of night, right? And in the book, I talk to her as a small mortal with a small mortal life about my small mortal problems. Mm-hmm. So I imagined her responding to that. What would a titan, like a deity, a primordial deity, think of someone, a tiny little person with tiny little person problems, constantly calling on her and forcing her to talk to them about that when they have so much else going on? Let me tell you also the epigraph to this poem. It's going to be important for the next one. Worlds such as this were not thought possible to exist. That was said by NASA astronomers in 2014, fun fact, upon discovering a planet that's like 17 times larger than Earth. They were like, what? And that's the kind of fact that I really like, so I threw it in. So this is in the voice of Nyx, speaking to me, I guess, or the speakers of the poems in which I try to talk to Nyx. Arrow. Was it I who invaded the day, or the day who invaded me? I do, I undo, I redo. I enlarged the figure until it was a mountain. I don't fear the sublime, and I cut off its head, having already cut out its tongue. I have 3 siblings and flocks of children, and though we're oft confused, you must know that I differ from all. I am not my brother Darkness, nor my sister Dirt, nor my brother Torment. I am a time, and I am an astronomy, a geometry I invented myself, an architecture, a divine. And like any divine, yes, I have made kin from unions with my kin. Out of a union with my brother, I made the nymphs, the river, and the boatsmen, lullabies. If X is an abstraction, and if the poetry of X was music, then this poem is a musical abstraction. And if this poem is a musical abstraction, then this poem is a lullaby, my kin, born of my kin. I am a space as much as I am a voice. Did you truly hail me for a dim-witted conversation about love? There is nothing like me. I am not my brother Darkness, nor my sister Dirt, nor my brother Torment, no more than I am the gaping from which I was born. I am a charioteer, a bird. Would you believe me if I said I also made the ether and the day? Whether or not your faith is stored in my ear, I am sure in what I have made. How could I be both gentle enough and dangerous enough for your thoughts? Do you have thoughts? I asked about moon, dark, pain. You only gave me yourself. And as to my other question, it was me. I invaded the day. It didn't stand a chance. So the next one is a long one and also the last one. I like to tell people both those things at the same time. I have a little explaining to do for this one. It's the first poem in Arrow, and it's a long poem. It's kind of a Bildungsroman, so a coming-of-age story. And as a result of being a coming-of-age story, it has a lot woven into it. Tons of references to poets that I admire and kind of grew up learning about poetry through. I talk to them by their first name here because I'm apparently quite bold and we're good buds. At least in my imagination. There are lines also embedded here from Titus Andronicus, stuff about ecology, astronomy, as I've already kind of given away. I'm pretty obsessed with both. As well as a lot about autobiographical and personal trauma that I kind of interweave with all of that. Also, one other thing. Does anyone remember the Malaysia Air flight that went missing? Good. I'm glad to see a lot of nods. I was really, really obsessed with that, and arguably kind of still am. That was taking place during the summer that I was writing this poem, so there are moments in there where I kind of mark the passage of time and mark like the emotional whatever of the speaker with it. And the last thing you need to know is the title is Marigolds, and that's inspired by the French word souci, which means both marigolds, like the flower, and worries or problems. And I thought that was pretty fun. All right, let's go. Marigolds. When I picture Robert, he is in the public garden, watching setting suns like the ill-fated king turn all to gold. Robert with the swans. Robert under the statue of Washington. Robert amid the tulips. Without a childhood home, I made for myself a house of orchids, of sewer grapes with fishes on them, of forsythia and maple trees. Of this I am sure. When Robert crossed the bridge between Boston and Cambridge, he saw Poseidon. In late summer, he alone could tell underneath the sailboats is a god, mighty and to be feared. In midwinter, he alone knew the ice could not long contain that god. In the pipes in his home, he heard the gurgle of illness. I smell illness in the riotous orchid blooms. What are midnight trees? I think that once I knew one such tree, if it is the kind owls gather on nightly to fight, barking, eyes dim with bloodlust and the hiss of feathers. I built for myself a house of orchids with a cave underneath, a cave shaped into an armory brimming with tarantula hawks, giant sparrow bees, and admiral butterflies. In place of stalactites hang treeless, inextricable roots, oh, sacred receptacle of my joys. The day I first learned the word Argonaut, I wrote it in a poem. I searched the seas for one. I searched the skies. I searched a painting. In the painting, I found the word spears, which I drove slowly into my father's ribs. He I eulogized, and he I resurrected, reaching again for the spears. I have seen countless full moons fail. Each of them hollowed, flooding heart first, the craw-faced light, the bracken underneath, then the sound of a wounded owl, and a soft, sudden darkness in my throat. Oh, how this villainy. In morning, the owls are replaced by hawks. From one angle, broad-winged hawks seem to have two pairs of hollow eyes. We are looking for you. Say the kettles of satellites to the humans lost, to the plane disappeared, to what lives 30 miles below the surface of Enceladus. On this morning in April, Hexan 01, Ocean Shield, and HMS Echo hear a thump that sounds like the colors inside an oyster shell. The frequency of the noise can make a heart stop. Anxious as seaweed over the sides of the ship creep hordes of trembling locators. The satellites stare with breath hitching in their throats. Between the wine-colored hull of Ocean Shield and Enceladus lies 8 times the distance between the Earth and the sun, and 30 miles below the surface of that geyser-ridden, tiger-striped Saturnian moon lies life, report the satellites. The hawks steal their 2 pairs of eyes up toward alien oceans on other planets. What I am is all that I can carry, wrote Deborah. What can I carry? All that I caught, I left behind. All that I missed, I carried. The hawks are not looking toward alien oceans. I am. I am looking too to alien men and women. I picture hurtling into them by turn to serve my lust. I picture us bent sideways, impaled, contorted, and screaming. I picture the different shades of a moan. The word bed fills the 4 eyes in my mind with the color gold. Gold of the ill-fated king and the garden sunset. Gold glinting in a decaying tooth. Goldenrod, a haze of pollen, the dragon's treasure. A long necklace of many fine gold chains reaching down to a woman's hips. Young man walks down to the river of gold. Young man walks down to the river and drowns. In the word bed also joyously wailed, bed, the color of ashen near death, bed, the fleshly color of bodies broken for good, bed, the color blue of heart-stopped lips. Oh, here I lift this one hand up to heaven. The ghosts of the poisoned dogs live in the piano. The ghost of my mother, still living, lives in her excised tumor and staghorn kidney stone. The ghost of my ability to love without grief, still living, lives in this poem. All my pockets filled with stones in the river I'll be found. Why then I am the devil's dam. Dangle me from a cliff 12,000 feet above sea. Oh, speak with possibilities. Build me a skin of glass to cover the Grand Canyon. Throw me on it. Summon 1,000 wilding mares. Restrain them with massive chains, foot-long links of hardened steel. When the chains buck from fracture, let the mares stampede the glass, bid them trample my body. Watch from a great distance as the glass cracks. Watch us beasts entangle. Watch me take a hoof to the mouth, to the skull, to the groin. Hear us squeal and bark and howl, calling out as wretches do to failing life. And when at last we 1,001 blood-filled creatures reach the bottom of the canyon, throw yourself in. My voice in your ear will tell you that you were meant to die like this, a beautiful and inelegant dive onto a field of rebs, some bright and sun-kissed, some dark and pulp-dashed, your and our blood across the burnt orange schist. See, oh see what I have done. I fear neither the sight of nor the word for blood. HMS Albatross has joined the search for the plane. It is May now, and there is no sign of it. The detritus lied. The home I made is of orchids, forsythia, barbed wire, and burnt metal. In the bedroom, I planted what I imagine a midnight tree to be. Its roots join the treeless roots in the armory beneath. Ravished, my hands cut off, my tongue cut out, I put my home under the wisteria, craving owls at war under thick purple overhang. No territory there is that is not mine. The albatross, it is mine. Enceladus is mine. Your innermost spy beneath the wisteria, mine. Poseidon is mine, and the river between Boston and Cambridge and the one that wends through Georgia floods into the Gulf. I am dreaming of a monument to moments colonized by theaters of the imagination. O monstrous, the O of a mouth without a tongue, the O of 2 pairs of lips clasped, starving on one another, horns and cry of hounds. The ballet in my deadly standing eye is the arrow's flight into the neck, the horse's tumble into the canyon, a nation's search for a single tiger with quills in its neck, a spilled cloud of felled bees, the elephant's horror in the flock of red-billed birds, feathered locusts who form their first breath, with trembling caverns in their mouths, their aggregate force snapping branches off of trees. The orchestra plays low drum beats, a single singer carving the melody. Do not, I pray, promise me an untroubled lake. Take me instead to the rivers with vengeful gods under steaming and frozen waters. Take me instead for the stag, the rifle, and the hunter. Promise me unending days in which I can picture, then picture again a fire whirl, the slowness of the sea drinking a ferry or a plane, the gasps of air bubbles around carapaces, the moons of Saturn. I myself am hells, and I prize them as if they were the rarest blooms. Promise me I will always reach again for spears, await the horses on the glass above the gaping hollow O of the earth. All is lost. Flee this house. so chants James's Ouija. Or perhaps in the palace of time, our lives are a circular stair, and I am turning, writes Lucille's ghost-guided hand. Always in the back of my mouth, I hold the head of an axe with its bit at the back of my throat. Oh heavens, can you hear a man groan? Here nothing breathes, but we phased and hungry. Oh, wondrous thing, worlds such as this were not thought possible to exist, writes the astronomer. It is June. Deep beneath those golden waves of the river I'll be found. My sister has joined the list of those I mourn. Her ghost lives in each powder-winged moth. In the ballet, the stage fills with a troupe of dancers in dusty gold skirts, shoes asphyxiation blue, hair the tones of flesh. Center stage are 6 dancers who wear only red, moving in unison so they throb as one bloodied yoke. The troupe around them shudders as though in blissful death throes, and the single singer quiets. The orchestra breaks down its instruments. For my brethren slain, I ask a sacrifice, O barbarous, beastly villains like myself. Die. Die saying please, die longing, die helpless, die with your eyes fixed to the most treacherous side of a mountain, to newborn stars, to plains not found. Die with your throat stuffed so that each moment hereafter is a dream of a gasp. Die so that my midnight tree might grow new branches. Die like a sapling struck by lightning in an ash-ridden and still smoldering field. Die amid the tulips, die smelling the orchids I grow. Die in the mass of horses and a pied flock of shrieking birds. From the oceans, creatures great and small take to the land. From the land, each parachuted seed takes to the sky. From within my armory comes a scent melodious and unearthly. A strain of moths, black, flies as though sewn each to each at the wing, and their flight path blooms into the dark into the gray air like a print from a silvered glass plate. Soon we will learn our bodies are formed of dead stars, so that if we made incisions from breastbone to rectum, the caves within would reveal themselves to house celestial ash. As the stag, I fear the mouth of the rifle. As the rifle, I point my mouth deadly toward you. As the hunter, I execute myself so I may feast. Worlds such as this were not thought possible to exist. My lord, I aim a mile beyond the honeyed moon. Thank you so much.